The church was quiet, but not peaceful. People filled the seats, dressed in expensive clothes, whispering behind careful smiles. The air felt heavy, like something was wrong, but no one wanted to say it out loud. At the altar stood a young woman in a white wedding dress. Her hands trembled. She held them tightly together, trying to stop the shaking, but it didn't work. Her heart beat fast, so loud it felt like everyone could hear it.
She didn't belong here.
Everyone knew it. She's just a servant, someone whispered from the front row. How did she even get here? Another voice said, low but sharp. She used to clean floors in that house. The words spread quietly, like poison in the room. The girl heard them. She heard every single word. Her name was Mabel. Just yesterday, she had been wearing simple, faded clothes, moving from room to room with her head lowered. She cleaned, cooked, obeyed orders, and endured harsh words without complaining. She had no voice, no power, no choice. And now she was standing in a wedding dress, about to marry one of the most feared men in the city. It didn't make sense, even to her. Her eyes moved slowly across the room. Wealthy men, powerful families, guards standing at every corner. No one smiled at her. No one welcomed her. They all looked at her like she was a mistake. Or worse, like she was something dirty that didn't belong in their world. Her throat felt dry. She wanted to run, but she couldn't, because she knew what waited for her if she did. At the front row, a woman sat with her back straight and her face cold. Madame Victoria, the woman who had controlled Mabel's life for years. The woman who had shouted at her, insulted her, and treated her like she was nothing. Her eyes were fixed on Mabel now. Hard, sharp, angry. There was no confusion in her expression, only hatred. Mabel lowered her gaze quickly, fear tightening in her chest. Why was this happening? Why would he choose her? Before she could think any further, the large doors of the church opened. A sudden silence fell across the room. All whispers stopped. All eyes turned. He had arrived. Slow, steady footsteps echoed against the floor as he walked in.
Tall,
powerful, untouchable. Dressed in a perfectly fitted black suit, his presence alone changed the atmosphere in the room. The guard straightened. The guests sat up. Even the air felt colder.
This was a man no one dared to challenge.
A man whose name carried fear.
Damien,
the mafia boss. His face showed no emotion as he walked forward. His eyes were calm, but there was something dangerous behind them, something no one could ignore. He didn't look at anyone else, only her. Mabel's breath caught as he approached. Her heart pounded harder with every step he took. When he finally stood in front of her, everything else seemed to disappear. The whispers, the people, the fear. It was just the two of them. She couldn't meet his eyes at first. She was too nervous, too confused, too scared. But then, his hand moved.
Slowly, gently.
He lifted her chin. Mabel froze. Her eyes met his. For a moment, she expected coldness, or indifference, or something that would remind her of her place. But instead, his voice came, low and steady. From today, no one will ever hurt you again. The words were simple, but they hit her deeply. Her lips parted slightly, her breath unsteady. No one had ever said something like that to her before. No one had ever protected her. No one had ever promised her anything. She didn't know if she should believe him. She didn't know if she even could. But something in his tone, it didn't sound like a lie. Behind them, Madame Victoria's expression darkened. Her fingers tightened against the armrest of her seat. Her eyes burned with anger. This was not what she wanted. This was not what she planned. The room remained silent, but the tension grew stronger. Everyone could feel it. This marriage was not normal. It was not love. It was not tradition. It was something else. Something dangerous. Something that could destroy everything. Mabel swallowed hard, her heart still racing. She stood there in her white dress, between fear and something she couldn't yet understand. She thought she was being saved, pulled out of a life of pain, given a second chance. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Something felt bigger than her, darker than she expected. because the truth was, she had not escaped anything. She had stepped into something far more dangerous. A war she didn't even understand yet. And there was no turning back. The house was always quiet in the early morning. Before the sun came up, before anyone else woke up, Mabel was already on her feet. She moved softly across the cold floor, careful not to make noise. The large mansion was beautiful, filled with expensive furniture and shining decorations, but to her, it never felt like a home. It felt like a place she was trapped in. Mabel tied her hair back quickly and picked up a bucket and cloth. There was always something to clean, always something to fix, always someone to serve.
She didn't complain.
She never did, because she had learned something very early. Complaining only made things worse. As she wiped the long dining table, her hands moved fast, used to the work. Her body was already tired, even though the day had just started. She had slept only a few hours. In a small corner near the kitchen. No bed, just a thin mat on the floor. It was cold at night, but she had gotten used to it. She had gotten used to everything. The insults, the shouting, the pain. Mabel. The sharp voice cut through the silence. Her body stiffened immediately. Madame Victoria. Mabel dropped the cloth quickly and hurried toward the living room. Yes, Ma, she said softly, her head lowered. Madame Victoria stood in the middle of the room, dressed neatly, her expression already full of irritation. Why is the floor still dirty? She snapped. Mabel blinked slightly. She had cleaned it the night before. I cleaned it, Ma, she said carefully. The next moment came fast. A loud slap. Her head turned to the side as the force hit her cheek. The sound echoed in the room. Mabel didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even react. She just stood still. Are you talking back to me now? Madame Victoria said, her voice cold. You think because you live here you have a voice? No, Ma, Mabel replied quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. Then clean it again, Madame Victoria said sharply. And this time, do it properly. Yes, Ma. Mabel bent down immediately and started cleaning the floor again. Her cheek burned. Her eyes felt heavy. But she didn't stop. She never stopped. Hours passed slowly. From cleaning to cooking. From washing clothes to carrying heavy items. From standing for long hours to running from one command to another. Mabel, bring my bag. Mabel, where is my tea? Mabel, are you deaf? Every call came with pressure. Every mistake came with punishment. Sometimes it was words. Sometimes it was worse. By afternoon, her legs ached badly. Her hands were sore. But there was no time to rest. There was never time. At one point, she paused near the kitchen door, holding a tray. Just for a second. Just to breathe. But that was enough. Madame Victoria appeared again, her eyes sharp. Why are you standing there like a statue? She demanded. I'm sorry, Ma, Mabel said quickly, adjusting the tray. Sorry? Madame Victoria laughed dryly. Sorry doesn't do the work. Mabel lowered her eyes. Yes, Ma. She walked away immediately. Faster this time. Careful this time. By evening, the house became lively with guests. Laughter filled the air. Music played softly. People smiled and talked like everything was perfect. Mabel moved quietly between them, serving drinks, clearing plates, staying invisible. No one asked her name. No one looked at her twice. To them, she was just part of the house. Like the chairs. Like the walls. Like something that didn't matter. One woman took a drink from her tray and glanced at her briefly. She looks too young to be working this hard, she said casually. Madame Victoria, standing nearby, smiled slightly. She should be grateful she even has a place to stay, she replied. The woman nodded and turned away. That was it. No one questioned it. No one cared. Late at night, after everyone had gone, Mabel was still working, cleaning the last of the dishes, wiping the floors again, putting everything back in place. Her body felt weak, her movements slower, but she kept going, because she knew, if anything was left undone, morning would be worse. When she finally finished, the house was silent again. Dark. Empty. She walked slowly to her small corner near the kitchen. She sat down carefully on the thin mat.
For a moment, she just stayed there. Still. Quiet.
Her cheeks still hurt. Her hands trembled slightly, but no tears came. She had stopped crying a long time ago. Slowly, she lay down, pulling a small cloth over herself. The floor was hard. The air was cold. But she closed her eyes anyway, because tomorrow would be the same. The same work, the same pain, the same silence. Mabel didn't fight. She didn't argue. She didn't hope. She just survived. Quietly. Like she had no voice. Like she was nothing. The house felt different after the wedding. Everything looked the same. The tall walls, the polished floors, the quiet halls. But something had changed. Mabel could feel it. Or maybe it was just her. She now lived in a large room on the upper floor. A real bed. Soft sheets. A mirror. Clothes neatly arranged for her. It didn't feel real. Every time she touched something, she felt like it would disappear. Like she didn't deserve it. That morning, she stood near the window, holding the edge of her dress tightly. She didn't know what she was supposed to do. Was she still a servant? Or something else? She didn't know. A soft knock came on the door. Mabel turned quickly. Yes, she said quietly. The door opened. He walked in.
Damien.
His presence filled the room immediately.
Calm.
Controlled. Dangerous. Mabel lowered her eyes at once, her body stiff.
Good morning, he said.
His voice was low, steady. Not loud. Not harsh. Still, it made her nervous. Good morning, sir, she replied softly. There was a short silence.
Then,
look at me. The words were simple, but they made her freeze. Slowly, Mabel raised her head. Her eyes met his. For a moment, she expected anger. Or coldness. Or something that reminded her of the way she had always been treated. But his face was calm. Too calm. It made her uneasy. You're still afraid, he said. It wasn't a question. Mabel swallowed. I'm not, sir, she said quickly.
A lie.
They both knew it. Damien stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough to make her heart beat faster. You don't need to lie, he said. His eyes stayed on hers.
Sharp.
Observing. Like he could see everything she was trying to hide. I know what this house has been like for you. Mabel's breath caught. Her fingers tightened slightly.
She didn't speak.
She couldn't. I know how my mother treats you, he continued. Her eyes widened just a little. She quickly looked down again. I'm sorry, sir, she began, her voice shaking.
Stop, he said.
She went silent immediately. I didn't ask for an apology. Another pause. Then he spoke again, slower this time. I've been watching. The words felt heavy. Mabel's heart skipped. Watching? Her mind began to race. How long? What had he seen? I saw the way you worked, he said. The way you stayed quiet. The way you endured everything. Mabel felt something tighten in her chest. No one had ever noticed. No one had ever said it out loud. You never fought back, he added. She shook her head slightly. I couldn't, sir. Her voice was soft. Honest. Damien studied her for a moment. Then he spoke again. I know more than you think. Mabel looked up slowly. Confusion filled her eyes. What do you mean? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the window, his hands behind his back.
Come.
Thoughtful. My mother is not as innocent as she appears, he said. Mabel frowned slightly. She didn't understand. Sir, I don't. There are things hidden in this house, he continued, cutting her off gently. Things that have been buried for years. Mabel's heart began to beat faster. She didn't know why, but something about his words made her uneasy. Things connected to you. Her breath stopped. To me, she asked softly. Damien turned to face her again. Yes. Silence filled the room. Mabel stared at him. Her mind was blank. I didn't marry you because I felt sorry for you, he said. The words were direct.
Clear.
They hit her harder than she expected. Her fingers loosened slightly. For a second, something inside her dropped. Of course. Why would a man like him marry her out of pity? It made no sense. I chose you, he continued. Mabel blinked.
Slowly.
Confusion replaced the small pain in her chest. Chose me, she repeated. His gaze didn't change. Yes.
Why?
The question came out before she could stop it. Her voice was soft, but filled with uncertainty. Damien walked closer again. This time, he stopped right in front of her. Close enough for her to feel his presence fully. Close enough for her to feel the weight of his words. Because you are part of something my mother tried to hide, he said quietly. Mabel's breath became uneven. I don't understand. You don't need to. Not yet. Her hands trembled slightly.
Fear.
Confusion. Questions she couldn't answer. All you need to know, he said, his voice steady, is that this marriage was not a mistake. Mabel looked at him, searching his face. For you, he added, it might feel like something sudden, something you didn't choose. He paused. But for me, this was planned. The words settled heavily in the room. Mabel felt her chest tighten.
Planned?
Everything? You were never just a maid, he said. Her eyes widened slightly. You just didn't know it. Silence followed.
Long.
Heavy. Mabel stood there, trying to understand, trying to make sense of everything. But nothing connected. Nothing felt clear. All she knew was her life had changed. But not in the way she thought. This wasn't just a marriage. This wasn't just protection. There was something deeper. Something hidden. Something dangerous. And somehow, she was at the center of it. Life in the mansion did not change the way Mabel thought it would. Yes, she was now married. Yes, she had a beautiful room, soft clothes, and a bed she had never dreamed of sleeping on. But inside the house, nothing really changed. The staff still looked at her the same way, like she didn't belong. Like she was still just a servant who had somehow found her way into a place she should never be. That morning, Mabel walked carefully down the long hallway, holding a small tray in her hands. She had woken up early, out of habit. Even though no one had asked her to work, she didn't know what else to do. Work was all she knew. As she passed by two maids standing near the staircase, their voices dropped to whispers. Look at her, one of them said quietly. Walking around like she owns the place. The other gave a small laugh. She thinks wearing fine clothes makes her different. Mabel's steps slowed slightly. She's still the same girl who used to scrub the floors, the first one added. Mabel kept walking. She didn't say anything. She didn't react. But inside, the words stayed. Heavy. Painful. Maybe they were right. Maybe nothing had changed. She reached the dining area and placed the tray carefully on the table. Her hands moved slowly, unsure of what she was supposed to do next. Should she wait? Should she leave? She didn't know her place anymore. Before she could decide, footsteps approached. Madame Victoria. Her eyes moved immediately to Mabel.
Cold. Sharp.
Unforgiving. What are you doing here? She asked. Mabel lowered her head quickly. I brought breakfast, Ma, she said softly. Madame Victoria's lips curved slightly, but there was no kindness in it. Old habits die hard, don't they? She said. Mabel stayed silent. You think wearing that dress makes you something special? Madame Victoria continued, stepping closer. You are still the same girl who came into this house with nothing. Mabel's fingers tightened slightly. Yes, Ma, she whispered. Madame Victoria looked at her with clear disapproval. Don't forget your place. The words sank deep. Mabel nodded slightly. I won't, Ma. Just then, another voice entered the room. Her place has changed. The air shifted immediately. Mabel's heart skipped. Damien. He walked into the dining area calmly, his expression unreadable. Madame Victoria turned to him, her face tightening. Damien, she said, forcing a small smile. We were just talking. I heard, he replied simply. His eyes moved to Mabel for a brief second, then back to his mother. She is not a servant anymore, he said.
His tone was calm,
but firm. Madame Victoria's smile faded. She may have a title now, she said, her voice slightly sharper. But that doesn't change what she is. Damien didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply stepped closer. That's where you're wrong, he said quietly. The silence in the room grew heavy. Mabel stood frozen, her heart beating fast. No one had ever spoken for her like this before. Not like this. Not openly. Damien turned slightly toward Mabel. Go and eat, he said. She blinked. I hear, she asked softly, unsure. Yes. Mabel hesitated. She wasn't used to sitting at the table. She wasn't used to being invited. But his eyes stayed on her, calm and steady.
Slowly, she nodded.
Yes, sir. She moved carefully to the chair and sat down, her body stiff. It felt strange, unfamiliar. Madame Victoria watched, her expression dark. But she said nothing more. Later that day, Mabel returned to her room. She paused at the door, looking around.
The bed.
The clean sheets. The soft light coming through the window. It still didn't feel like hers. She stepped inside slowly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the table. For a moment, she just stood there, thinking, feeling. Then she heard another knock. Her heart jumped slightly. Yes, she said. The door opened. Damien walked in again. He looked around the room briefly. Is everything here okay? He asked. Mabel nodded quickly. Yes, sir. He noticed the hesitation. If something is missing, it will be brought, he said. She lowered her eyes. Thank you. There was a short silence. Then he spoke again. If anyone speaks to you with disrespect, you don't have to accept it. Mabel looked up, surprised. I'm used to it, she said quietly. I know, he replied. His voice softened just a little. But you don't have to be anymore. The words stayed in the air. Mabel felt something shift inside her. Small, but real. He didn't stay long. He simply turned and walked out, as calm as he had entered. No drama. No loud protection. Just presence. Just quiet control. Mabel sat slowly on the bed. Her hands rested on her lap. Her mind replayed everything. The way he spoke for her. The way he stopped his mother. The way he told her she didn't have to accept disrespect anymore. It wasn't loud. It wasn't overwhelming. But it was something she had never known before. Safety. Slowly, her body relaxed. Just a little. Her shoulders dropped. Her breathing eased. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she had to be on guard. She didn't feel like she had to hide. She didn't feel like she was completely alone. It wasn't perfect. The house was still cold. The people were still distant. But something had changed. And for the first time, Mabel felt it. She was no longer just surviving. Slowly, she was beginning to feel safe. The days in the mansion began to change slowly, not in a loud or obvious way, but in small, quiet moments that Mabel did not expect. At first, she still moved carefully, watching every step, every word, every reaction. She was used to being cautious, used to being ignored, or worse. But Damien began to notice things. One evening, Mabel was arranging plates in the dining room when her sleeve slipped slightly. A faint bruise showed on her arm. She didn't realize it, but he did. His eyes paused on it for a second. Just a second. Then, he walked closer. What happened to your arm? He asked. Mabel froze. Her first instinct was to hide it. She quickly pulled her sleeve down. It's nothing, she said softly. Damien didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at her.
Calm.
Steady. Waiting. Mabel felt uneasy under his gaze. I hit something, she added quickly. Another lie. He knew it. But he didn't push. Instead, he said quietly, next time, be careful. His voice wasn't accusing. It wasn't harsh. It was different. Mabel nodded. Yes, sir. But that night, something stayed in her mind. He noticed. No one had ever noticed before. The next morning, something else happened. Mabel was standing near the kitchen door again, holding a tray. She was waiting, as usual, waiting for instructions, waiting to be told what to do. Why are you standing there? She turned quickly. Damien was there. I was waiting, she said. For what? She hesitated. I don't know. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said something she didn't expect. Come and eat. Mabel blinked. Eat, she repeated. Yes. Her heart started to race. At the table? She asked, unsure. Yes. She shook her head slightly. I can't. Why? I'm not supposed to. Who said that? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew. Damien stepped closer. You are my wife, he said calmly. You are supposed to. The words felt strange.
Wife.
She still wasn't used to it. Mabel looked at the table, then back at him. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, sir. They sat down together. The silence between them was soft, not heavy. Mabel picked up the spoon carefully, her hands slightly shaking. She wasn't used to this.
Sitting. Eating.
Being seen.
She took a small bite.
Then another. She didn't look at him, but she could feel his presence.
Calm.
Watching. Not judging. For once, she didn't feel rushed. That moment stayed with her. Later that day, something happened again. Mabel was walking through the hallway when two staff members passed by. They didn't lower their voices this time. She's lucky, one of them said. Lucky, the other replied. She trapped him, that's all. Mabel slowed down slightly. She'll go back to where she belongs soon, the first one added. Before Mabel could move away, a voice came from behind them. Say that again. The hallway fell silent. Both staff members turned immediately. Damien stood there, his expression calm, but his eyes cold. No one spoke. I'm waiting, he said. His voice was low, controlled. The first staff member swallowed. We didn't mean. I didn't ask what you meant, Damien interrupted. Silence. Heavy.
Tight.
She is my wife, he continued. You will speak to her with respect. No shouting. No anger. But his words carried weight. Real weight. Yes, sir, they both said quickly. Damien didn't say anything more. He simply walked past them. Mabel stood still, her heart beating fast. She wasn't used to this. Someone standing up for her. Someone correcting others because of her. When Damien passed her, he didn't stop. But he said one thing. Don't listen to them. Then he kept walking. That night, Mabel sat in her room quietly, her hands resting on her lap, her mind replaying everything. The way he noticed her injury, the way he told her to eat, the way he defended her without raising his voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Slowly, something inside her began to change. The fear didn't disappear. Not completely. But it became softer. Weaker. She no longer felt like she had to protect herself all the time. She no longer felt invisible. And Damien, he was changing too. His voice became softer when he spoke to her. His presence felt less intimidating, less distant, more human. One evening, as she stood by the window, he walked into the room. She turned slightly. Good evening, sir, she said. He paused, then said quietly, You don't have to call me that. Mabel blinked. She didn't know what to say. He looked at her for a moment, then added, You can call me Damien. The name felt strange on her lips.
New. Different.
But something about it made her chest feel warm. Damien, she said softly. For the first time, she saw a slight change in his expression. Not a smile, but something close. And, in that quiet moment, without force, without pressure, something began to grow between them. Slowly, naturally. Something neither of them said out loud. But both of them could feel. The truth did not come with noise. It came quietly, like something that had been waiting for a long time. That evening, the mansion was unusually silent. No guests, no laughter, no movement. Even the air felt different. Heavy, like it was holding something back. Mabel stood by the window in her room, her fingers resting lightly on the curtain. Her thoughts were far away. Ever since Damien spoke about things hidden in the house, her heart had not been at peace. She didn't understand, but she felt it. Something was coming. A soft knock broke the silence. Her heart jumped slightly. Yes, she said. The door opened slowly. Damien walked in. His face was calm as always. But tonight, there was something else behind it. Something deeper. Something serious.
Mabel, he said. His voice was low. Different.
She straightened immediately. Yes, Damien. She was still getting used to calling his name. He closed the door behind him. The small sound echoed in the room. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, he stepped closer. I need to tell you something, he said. Mabel's chest tightened. Something about his tone made her nervous. What is it? She asked softly. Damien looked at her carefully, like he was thinking about how to say it. Or how much it would hurt. What you know about your past, he began slowly, is not the truth. Mabel froze. Her fingers tightened slightly against the curtain.
I don't understand, she said.
Her voice was quiet, uncertain. Damien took another step closer. You were told your parents died, he said. Mabel nodded slowly. Yes. That part is true. Her chest rose slightly. But before she could feel relief, he continued. But you were never told how they died. The air in the room changed. Mabel felt it immediately. A strange coldness ran through her. What do you mean? She whispered. Damien's eyes didn't leave hers. They didn't die by accident, he said. The words landed slowly. Heavy. Painful. Mabel blinked. Her mind struggled to catch up. What are you saying? She asked. Her voice shook this time. Damien didn't look away. My family was involved. Silence. Total silence. It felt like the world had stopped. Mabel stared at him. Her lips parted slightly. But no words came out. Her heart was beating too fast. Too loud. No, she said finally, shaking her head slowly. That's not possible. She took a step back. Her breathing uneven. No, that's not true. Damien didn't stop her. He let her react. He let the truth settle. My mother, he said quietly, was responsible. The words hit harder. Mabel's back touched the wall behind her. Her body felt weak, like the strength had left her legs. No, she whispered again. Her eyes filled with confusion.
Pain. Fear.
Why? She asked. That was the only question her mind could form.
Why?
Damien's jaw tightened slightly. Your father worked for our family, he said. He knew things he was not supposed to know. Mabel's chest rose sharply. Her hands began to tremble. My mother saw him as a threat. The room felt smaller, colder. So she removed him. Mabel's eyes widened. Her breath caught. And your mother, Damien continued, tried to protect him. Tears filled Mabel's eyes instantly. So she was killed too. The silence that followed was unbearable. Mabel didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't think. It was too much, too fast, too painful. My parents, she whispered. Her voice broke. They didn't just die. Damien didn't interrupt. They were killed, she finished. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then another. And another. For the first time in a long time.
She cried.
Not quietly, not silently, but with pain. Real pain. Everything she thought she knew about her life was gone. But Damien wasn't done. There's more, he said. Mabel looked up at him, her face wet with tears, her eyes searching. What else? She asked weakly. His voice became even quieter. You were not supposed to stay in this house. Her brows pulled together. I don't understand. My mother kept you here, he said, to hide the truth. The words hit differently. Mabel's breathing stopped again. To hide me, she repeated. Damien nodded slightly. If you were gone, no one would question what happened. Mabel's hands covered her mouth.
Shock. Pain.
Disbelief. But if you stayed. His eyes darkened slightly. As nothing. Mabel's knees almost gave out. She grabbed the edge of the table beside her. So she made me a servant, she whispered, her voice filled with realization. To erase me. Damien didn't deny it. That was her plan. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it was heavier, darker, more painful. Mabel slowly shook her head, tears falling without stopping. All these years, she said. I was right in front of her. Her chest tightened. And she knew. Damien stepped closer. I found out 3 years ago, he said. Mabel looked at him. Through her tears. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Her voice wasn't angry. Just broken. Because I needed proof, he said. And I needed to protect you first. She swallowed hard. So you married me, she said slowly. To expose her. And to make sure she could never hurt you again. Mabel stared at him. Everything made sense now. The wedding. The protection. The silence. The watching. It was never random. It was never pity. It was a plan. A deep, dangerous plan. She took a slow breath. But it didn't steady her. Nothing could. Her entire life
was a lie.
The woman she feared, the woman she obeyed, the woman she called Madam, was the same woman who destroyed her family. Mabel's hands dropped slowly to her sides, her body still shaking, her eyes filled with pain. And something else. Something new. Something stronger. She looked at Damien. Not like before. Not like someone afraid, but like someone who finally understood. "This isn't over, is it?" she asked. Damien's expression didn't change. "No," he said. And in that moment, Mabel realized the truth. She had not been saved. She had been placed in the center of something far bigger, far darker.
A war.
And this time, she was no longer just surviving.
She was part of it.
The woman she had called Madam for years was the same woman who had stolen her family, her name, and her life. The truth did not stay hidden for long. It exploded, like a fire that had been waiting for years. That night, the mansion was no longer quiet. Voices filled the halls. Guards moved quickly. The air was tense, heavy with danger. Everyone knew something had changed. Mabel stood in the middle of the large living room, her heart beating fast. Her eyes were no longer soft with fear. They were sharp now, awake. Across from her stood Madame Victoria. Her face was no longer calm. It was furious. "How dare you stand there and look at me like that?" she snapped. Her voice was louder than ever before. Mabel didn't look away. Not this time. "You killed them," Mabel said. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear. The room went silent. The words hung in the air. Madame Victoria's eyes darkened. "You don't know what you're talking about," she replied sharply. "I know enough," Mabel said. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. "You took everything from me." A small, cold smile appeared on Madame Victoria's face. "And what are you going to do about it?" she asked. The question was dangerous. Mocking, like she was still in control, like Mabel was still nothing. But Mabel didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Footsteps echoed behind her. Slow, steady, powerful. Damien. He walked into the room like a storm that had finally arrived. The guards straightened immediately. The staff went silent. Even the air seemed to shift. Madame Victoria turned to him. Her anger changed into something sharper. Something personal. "So this is your doing?" she asked. Damien stopped beside Mabel. Close enough to protect. Far enough to stay calm. "Yes," he said. No hesitation. No fear. Madame Victoria laughed. A cold, dry laugh. "You chose her," she said. "Over your own family?" Damien's expression didn't change. "She is the truth," he replied. "And you?" she asked, her voice rising. "I am your mother." Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Damien looked at her, not like a son, but like a man who had already made his decision. "You are the reason this house is built on lies," he said. Madame Victoria's face hardened. "You think you can stand against me?" she snapped. "Everything you have, this power, this house, this name, came from me." Her voice filled the room. Strong. Commanding. "You will lose everything," she added. Damien didn't move. Didn't flinch. "If protecting her means losing everything," he said slowly, "then I'll burn everything." The words landed like thunder. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the guards looked uncertain. Because this was no longer a family argument. This was war. Madame Victoria's eyes burned with rage. "Guards," she said sharply. At once, several men stepped forward. Their hands moved toward their weapons. Mabel's heart jumped. Fear returned for a moment. But Damien didn't step back. He stepped forward. One step.
And that was enough.
The guards froze. Because they knew. They knew who he was. They knew what he could do. "I gave you everything," Madame Victoria continued, her voice shaking slightly with anger. "And you repay me with betrayal?" Damien's voice remained calm. "You gave me power," he said, "but you used it to destroy innocent people." Silence again. He looked around the room. At the guards. At the staff. At everyone watching. "The truth is no longer hidden," he said. His voice carried authority. Real authority. "From today, she is not to be touched. Not by anyone." No one questioned him. No one dared. Madame Victoria stepped forward, her control slipping. "You think this is over?" she said.
Her voice was lower now.
"More dangerous. I can still destroy her." The threat was clear.
Direct.
Damien's eyes turned cold.
"Try," he said.
One word, but it carried weight. A warning. A promise. For a long moment no one moved. No one spoke. Then slowly, the guards stepped back. One by one, their loyalty shifting. Not to her, but to him. Madame Victoria saw it. Her eyes widened slightly. For the first time, she was losing control. "This house, this power," she said, her voice no longer as strong as before. "It belongs to me." Damien shook his head once.
"No," he said.
"It ends today." The finality in his voice was undeniable. Madame Victoria stood still. Her anger, her power, her control, all slipping away. She had ruled through fear for years.
But now,
fear had turned against her. Mabel stood quietly beside Damien, her body still shaking slightly. But her head was no longer lowered. Her eyes no longer avoided anyone. For the first time, she stood tall. Not as a servant. Not as someone invisible. But as someone who mattered. Someone who had a voice. Damien didn't look at her. But his presence beside her said everything. He had chosen. And he had not turned back. The war had come. And it had ended. Not with chaos. Not with destruction. But with a decision. A line drawn.
Clear.
Final. He didn't just fight for her. He chose her. Over blood, over power, over everything. And in that moment, the house that once broke her finally fell. The house felt different. Not just quiet, but free. For the first time in years, there was no fear hiding in the walls. No whispers filled with tension. No heavy presence controlling every movement. Madame Victoria was gone. Removed. Her power, her control, her voice, taken away completely. The truth had been exposed to everyone. The staff. The guards. The people who once feared her. They all knew now. What she had done. What she had hidden. And how she had used power to destroy innocent lives. No one spoke her name with respect anymore. Only silence followed it. The mansion that once felt like a prison now felt like something else. Something new. Mabel stood at the top of the staircase, her hand resting lightly on the railing. Her eyes moved slowly across the house. Everything looked the same, but it no longer felt the same. She took a deep breath. It was lighter, easier. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Footsteps came from behind her. She didn't turn immediately. She already knew who it was. Damien. He stopped beside her, his presence calm, no longer distant. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. They both knew what had changed. "She's gone," he said finally. His voice was quiet. Not cold. Not heavy. Just calm. Mabel nodded slowly. "I know." There was no fear in her voice. No hesitation. Just acceptance. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Mabel turned her head slightly and looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time, she wasn't nervous. She wasn't unsure. She wasn't standing there like someone who needed permission to exist. She stood beside him. Equal. "I used to be afraid of this place," she said softly. Damien looked at her. His expression changed slightly. "You had every reason to be," he replied. Mabel shook her head gently. "But I'm not anymore." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Real weight. Because they were true. She wasn't the same girl who cleaned floors with trembling hands. She wasn't the same girl who stayed silent through pain. Something had changed. Something had grown. And it showed. Damien watched her for a moment. Then he asked, "What do you want now?" The question surprised her. No one had ever asked her that before. What she wanted. Not what she was told to do. Not what she had to survive. But what she wanted. Mabel looked ahead. Thinking. Feeling. For the first time, choosing. "I want to live," she said. Her voice was steady. Confident. "I don't just want to survive anymore." Damien nodded slowly. Like he understood. Like he had been waiting for her to say it. "You will," he said. No promise. No pressure. Just certainty. Mabel turned fully toward him now. Her eyes clear. Her shoulders relaxed. And you, she asked. What do you want? Damien didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed on her.
Different now.
Not distant. Not cold. Something softer. Something real. You, he said. The word was simple, but it carried everything. Mabel's breath caught slightly. Not from fear, but from something else. Something warm. Something new. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Then slowly, very slowly, a smile formed on her lips. Small at first. Uncertain, but real.
It was the first time she smiled like that.
Without fear. Without pain. Without holding anything back. Damien saw it, and for the first time, his expression changed too. Not a full smile, but something close. Something human. You are never just a maid, he said quietly. Mabel's eyes softened. You are the only truth in this house. The words settled between them.
Deep. Honest.
Final. Mabel took a small step closer. Not because she had to,
but because she wanted to.
And this time, she didn't lower her head. She didn't hesitate. She stood beside him. Not behind him. Not beneath him. Beside him. Equal. The house that once broke her now stood as proof of how far she had come. The fear was gone. The pain no longer controlled her. And the silence that once trapped her had been replaced with something stronger. Her voice.
Her choice.
Her life. She looked around one last time. Then back at him. Ready. Not to survive, but to live. He didn't just save her, he gave her a life where she could finally live.